Hello, in this lecture and video, I'll explain the requirements of the final presentation and what needs to be done about it. When it comes to your final presentation, there are three things that you need to pay attention to. One is, of course, to schedule it before December 4th, and you need to write a submission on Blackboard. You can either attach a file or write a submission with date, time, and if it's a virtual meeting, the link to invitation link to your meeting. The other one is delivery of your presentation that needs to happen December 7th, between December 7th and 11th during that week. And lastly is the file for your presentation. So the PowerPoint file, you need to upload that on Blackboard no later than December 11th at 5 p.m. So the submission link is already open under assignments. So on Blackboard under assignments, there are two links. One is for date, time, an invitation link for your presentation, and the other one is the actual PowerPoint file of the presentation. And I've included a little bit explanation under the links for you guys too. The other thing is I have also included a presentation template for your convenience. You don't have to, it's not a requirement to use this template presentation, but I've made a template presentation, which I'll talk about a little bit later. One is just a normal size, one is a widescreen 16:9 ratio screen template. The other thing that you can find on Blackboard is for your grading and what your mentors are going to be used for your grading of your presentation, which I'm going to show you in the next slide. So these are the files that they have been on Blackboard since beginning of the semester, but I just want to kind of highlight them where they are so you can access them easier. So this is the grading rubric that the mentors, all of the mentors will use to grade your presentation. And as you can see, there is a group portion of it that goes mostly back to your presentation. But then there is an individual section of it too, which each has 7 points here. And they're pretty straightforward, but just keep in mind when you're preparing your presentation or you are giving the talk, keep these grading points and rubric in mind. So the setup for presentation is going to be, you have 20 minutes to present, and then you have 7 minutes of Q&A. So overall it's 30 minutes time slot for your presentation. It can be in person or virtually. So whatever is the format of your group meetings right now, if it's in person, you can present to your mentor or sponsor or whoever you want to invite to your presentation in person. If your team meetings are currently over either Zoom or Teams, something like that, you can schedule them virtually too. So every member should be presenting. That means each member should have roughly equal time of that 20 minutes, and they should present parts of the presentation. And as we talked about it, it is part of the grading to individual grades, and each member will be graded individually as well. So make sure to coordinate and invite your industry sponsor. If you're working with a project that has either an individual or a company as a sponsor, make sure to invite them as well, whether it's in person again or virtual. They should also be included. So when you're scheduling, make sure to check with them and see if they are free and available to join as well. My suggestion is usually use your weekly meeting time, because you know that at least you and your mentor are free at that time. But it's always good to check with your sponsor to see if they can make it or not. So to talk about the content of your presentation, I have included some examples for you on Blackboard that you can definitely check and look on those examples. But so these are typically what we expect you to include as the content of the semester presentation. So you need to have a title slide, which Needs to have your project title, team members, your mentor or your mentors, the company name. You can include the company logo. And if you want to use any logo, you should use NDSU and mechanical engineering logo as well. You should have a brief description of your problem, provide sufficient background. So plan for your presentation as if you're giving it to someone that they have no clue about your project. So you should give all the information that is necessary and include all of those background information that needs to be included. You also needs to go over the solution and what the expected solution or the proposed solution to that problem is. Then you gotta kind of explain your process and basically what you've done up to this point. You need to talk about your design constraints. You need to talk about your different design alternatives and solutions, the concept development process, the concept selection process, if you have a scoring and a screening matrices, those, and all of those and anything else that has gone to your design process, you need to include that in your presentation. If you have done, so a brief discussion of the work completed this semester. So that includes any FEA analysis, CAD modeling, hand calculations, anything that has been done to confirm and approve the design for your problem. So you got to go over a summary of the planned work for next semester. So what is the plan for next semester? You have to present your project plan and project budget. You don't need to go into details or too much details of each of those. It's usually an overview of the project plan, the major milestones, and whether you are ahead, whether you're behind. If you're behind, what measures are you going to take to kind of bring the project back on track. For your budget, you got to go over the highlights of the budget and what are the major components that are contributing to your budget, and how much is your total funds. And then as a professional presentation, you always should have a slide for acknowledgements. It could be your classmates, peers, co-workers, course instructor, industry contact, definitely your department, department chair usually, because they help you with funding and stuff like that, and whoever has helped you with your project this semester. So whether it's in person or virtual, you still need to dress professionally. So it's expected that you dress business casual. And here are some examples of what constitute as business professional or business casual. Usually a nice shirt, a button-up shirt, or a polo is considered business casual. Black pants or khakis are always acceptable. Tie for men are optional. You don't have to wear tie, but I mean, it's also considered business casual. If you're doing a virtual meeting, make sure that you have your face is lit up. You're not sitting in front of a window, something like that, that your background is so bright and your face is dark. Also, if you are presenting from your apartment, from your dorm, your room, make sure that the background is professional and appropriate. There's no distraction. It's not too busy. Something else is not going on in the background. So please pay attention to those. So I've also included some other items of clothing for you to see and pick from. I don't want to label them as boys, girls, men, women, whatever fits you and you're comfortable with, you're welcome to wear to your professional and business casual for your presentation. The other thing that I want to talk about is about the graphics. I talked to you about the PowerPoint templates that I made for this class. That PowerPoint template, you can use it for any class. It's not just for senior design. The PowerPoint is using NDSU Mechanical Engineering, and I think even NDSU logo on the cover. It is also designed with the NDSU colors. One thing that I want to ask you guys to ask, do not use any athletic logo or the official seal of the university. These two are only to be used by president um, an athletic department, and these logos are only with athletic department permission. So do not use them on your professional reports, presentation for any classes. Just try to use mechanical engineering logos. But as I said, there is a template on Blackboard. So I have adjusted the font size uh, and stuff like that. So all you have to do is just add a click and add a new slide, and everything is adjusted if you want to use it. If you have your own template, that's perfect. Feel free to use that one as well. So the whole point of doing this presentation and why this is a requirement for the class is to kind of work on your communication skills. So they are as important as learning mathematics, science, and engineering. I would say they're even more important. And for those of you that you've gone through internship and co-op and ME 397, and you presented to me and Dr. Alvin, I'm pretty sure a lot of you have mentioned that, boy, communication skill is really important. And I learned that through my co-op when we had these meetings and presentations, and I need to talk to clients and customers over the phone, over in Europe or India or South America. So you can do an amazing job. You have the best senior design presentation project, but if you can't present your work and speak what's on your mind, then people are not going to know about it. So that's why it's so important, and that's why we make that a big part of senior design class. Unfortunately, because of the pandemic situation, we've had to adjust a little bit, do a lot of them over Zoom and virtually, but still it's important to have those skills and kind of work on them. So I'll let you read through these slides. I'm not going to read the bullet points for you, but the communication skills that we're talking about is both in the form of giving an oral presentation, such as this one, but also writing a report. And that's why the report and presentation, they kind of go hand in hand, and they're both important as a form of communication of your project to your mentor, sponsor, and to your peers. So the important thing is when you're presenting, making a presentation, or when you're presenting, it's important to be clear. You know, again, think about your audience, even if it's only your mentor or your industry sponsor, as someone who has no idea about your project. So make sure that you're communicating your idea clearly to them, and in a coherent in a way that they are able to understand it. The other important thing is, if I don't know if you paid attention, but one of the items that you're going to be graded on is how well you use your time. You don't want to exceed your allocated time, but also you don't want to be too short. If your presentation is 12 minutes when it was supposed to be 20, that's also a problem. So it's important to get a practice and make sure that you are within 20 minutes. But if it's not, and you got to include a lot of material in a short period of time, you got to go back and kind of redesign and change the scope of your talk a little bit. If you have any information that you see, it can be eliminated. If there's a graph or table that's too much information and equation, you can get rid of that. So usually I don't recommend, or I don't ask the students to use a slide for outline. Instead of going over, hey, here's an outline of what we're going to talk about, just start talking about it, especially if you're short on time. And again, it's important to practice and make sure that you are not checking your time or clock and see, I have 1 more minute, but I still have 6 more slides to go. So you're just kind of flashing and kind of rushing through your slides. That is also not a good communication skills, and not a good thing to do during your presentation. So here in this case, not only you're going to lose your audience, but also you're going to lose points when it comes to senior design presentation. So Again, here's a myth. Shorter time limits means emphasize over generals, but that's absolutely not true. If you have a short presentation and short time to do, it's always better to focus on the specifics and talks about the specifics similar to what you have here as your senior design project. Um, so now we're going to talk about a little bit about the structure of your slide, not the content usually, and how to deliver an effective talk. So um, so it's it's a common practice to kind of calculate your speed in slides per minute and figure out how many slides you're talking per minute. Of course, it depends on the slides. Some slides has one figure, one table, but some slides have more information on them. But it's just good to have an average time of yourself. Bullets, use bullets as just to give the audience the key information instead of writing paragraphs and full sentences. um, and because when you're giving a presentation, your audience will automatically start reading off your slides and not listening to you. So that's why it's important to give them a key information, but the main content will be delivered orally by you. If you are presenting in person, so the font should be chosen in a way that it's visible from back of the room. Shouldn't have too much information. And having an enough large size font will help with that, because when your font is a large size, you cannot cram too much information on one slide. The template that I created, I've chosen an optimum font size for you. So if you just use that template, you should be in good shape. Um, so, and this is a general note when it comes to reports, articles, presentations. A graph is a good way to convey information, and then the next is a table, and then the next is information in word or sentence as a paragraph. So if you can convey something by a graph, put a graph on there or a picture on there and then explain, rather than a table or writing sentences. So we're going to have an example of how to go over complicated equations and mathematical equations and stuff like that. So I made this a slide kind of on purpose to show you this is a bad example of how one slide could be. So again, this slide is an excellent example of a terrible slide. But perhaps this could be good for a lecture, but not for a scientific or professional or senior design presentation. Too much information, full sentences. I didn't give you the key points in the bullet. So whatever I told you not to do, you can see it on this slide, and that's why it's not a good example for your senior design presentation. Here's an example of like how you can include an equation. So you do not need to explain everything in that equation to the audience, but it's good to kind of walk through the equation. Just give them how the equation works and maybe what are some of the key terms in that equation that relates to your work and how you've used it or how you measured it. If it's an equation such as this one, needs a reference, this is also a good example of how to reference an equation. The other thing is, when we talked about the effective slides, it's about the font. And we talked about that it needs to be visible from back of the room. These are some general guidelines for presentations and stuff like that. Again, if it's a virtual and through Zoom or Teams, still you gotta take into account the font size and visuals and stuff like that. The background, when it's virtually and over the computer, is a less of a concern, meaning the background color. Usually plain colors without any patterns or design are preferred. The fonts that I have used for the presentation template, I think, I'm not sure, it could be Helvetica or Times New Roman or combination of those two. We talked about figures a little bit. So now I want to emphasize that each figure should have a message and should have a purpose. So do not include a picture just because you have it and you want to kind of fit it in your presentation. Every figure should have an explanation and should add to what you're talking about, and stuff like that. So again, what you got to do is emphasize on the data, on what the figure is representing, and all other tips for you to make your figures and your presentation effective. One other thing that I've seen a lot in presentations is when students present a figure or a graph that has data and they forget units or they forget to label the axis. So make sure that you are paying attention to those details. One of the things that I want to mention is, again, this is part of giving an effective talk and an effective presentation. So you might not using all of this in this class because you're presenting just to your mentor. It could be virtually, but these are good points to know when you're presenting at work, and whatever other classes you might have, job interviews, reports of co-op, internship, whatever it might be. So focus on the content. You must know everything that is on your presentation, okay? And every team member needs to know everything that's on the presentation. If you're going through a presentation and you see a figure, ANSYS analysis, a data, a graph, a table, and you do not understand it, you have to learn it, ask about it, and know it. Don't just assume because Jack or Jane or Joe put that on the presentation, you don't need to know about it. The other thing is be passionate and enthusiastic about what you're presenting and what you are talking. So this senior design project is something that you guys should be proud of, especially during these times. You've done something amazing and accomplished a lot. So let that show through your passion and your voice and what you're presenting to your audience, although it might be the audience of one or a few people only. The other thing is keep in mind the time that you have and what you have to accomplish and the portion that you're talking about. So just have an organization and simplify the contents if that's needed. So of course, you're not able to give all the information about your senior design project. So that's why you got to kind of bring out the main points and the stress only on them. So that goes all in your organization and what needs to be done. So again, this whole presentation more towards a general audience and a larger audience. But again, you want to kind of give audience or your mentor the main message from your project and what the main message is about your project. So you don't want that to get lost because you have too much information or your presentation is not organized. We talked about this a little bit in content, but that goes again hand in hand with content. So again, it goes back to your passion and enthusiasm about the topic, and if you know your material thoroughly, that also helps you with the confidence in your presentation. So all of these 3 points kind of go hand in hand with when it comes to presentation. We're going to talk about the practice here. So before giving the talk, make sure that you're practicing your presentation in front of a mirror, in front of a computer, record yourself, watch yourself, whatever it might be. But you got to be careful that your presentation doesn't sound memorized. So don't overdo it. It's good to be prepared, but it's okay to let some stuff just happen naturally as you're giving the talk. This is also more for a live audience in a large classroom. It doesn't apply for virtually, but it's really good to establish like an eye contact, show your passion, show your confidence, and interact with the audience, look them in the eye. use proper hand gesture and all of that for your audience. If you're presenting in a classroom, the worst thing you can do is stand sideways, or even worse, turn your back to the audience and start reading from the slides. That's the worst thing you can do in a presentation. And whether it's virtual or in person, use a laser pointer or something like what I'm using, a pen, to kind of highlight some of the main points and kind of get the audience attention a little bit more. And lastly, what I want to talk about is the Q&A. Again, if you're only presenting to your mentor will do all the questioning, or your industry contact will do the questioning. I might hop in and out of some of the meetings depending on when they're scheduled and when they are, if I'm free. I might also ask you guys some questions. In grading, there was some points for Q&A, so it's expected that every member answers at least one question. So don't wait for your friends and everybody else to answer a question. If you know the answer, just hop in and answer the question. But again, during Q&A, be professional. Do not interrupt the person who is asking the question, and do not interrupt your friend that are answering a question. If you feel your friend is wrong, it's not professional to point out that says, well, this was wrong, this is the correct answer. You can add to their answer and clarify that for the person who asked the question. So just keep in mind when it comes to Q&A, stuff like that. And also, it is okay to say, I don't know, and I will look into it, or I figure it out for you, or I'll find the answer for you. So if you do not the answer to a certain question, it's okay to confess that, and don't try to come up or make up the answer. Or if your mentor asks, well, have you done this analysis? Just be honest. If you haven't done it, say, no, we haven't, but we can add it, or we can look into it. Hopefully you're not going to have this issue of an aggressive questioner, but it might happen. The important thing is you always remember to stay professional. This is a professional presentation, whether it's virtual or in person. You do not need to get in an argument with anybody about a question and answer. And again, the best in this situation is just kind of deflect aggressive questionnaires and stuff like that. So the last thing I want to mention is, please check the examples that are posted on Blackboard. The examples are under course content, and then the examples folder. So under examples folder, there are examples of previous semesters presentations, so you can kind of see what they've included, what format they use, what is the content, how their acknowledgement slide looks like, the title slides, and all of that. So make sure to check the examples before starting to working on your presentations. Thank you.